Welcome to everyone.
Good morning. You know, I've done this a number of times before, and it's difficult to think of something new to say. So those of you who have listened dutifully before, if you take a little nap, I won't be offended. We're going to vary a little bit today. I'm going to speak to you a little for a short time with an overview of the things that are happening in San Dimas, the good things and our challenges. And then I'm going to ask Blaine to join me, and we're going to answer any questions any of you might want to ask. Blaine and I have a cable TV program which is available on Spectrum. It's available on the FiOS, Frontier FiOS, and it's also available streaming on a website, so if you ever want to see what Ask the Mayor looks like, it's really Ask the Mayor and the City Manager. But people are very kind the ones who call in and asking questions. Nobody yells at us very much, I think that's because of the calming demeanor of Blaine and the confidence people have that he's giving them the straight answers. So I'm going to expose him to you right here in front of a live audience, and if there are any questions you'd like to ask Blaine about the city or me about the city, in a short time you'll have that opportunity. The city of San Dimas is actually doing very well. Cities, as you may know, are really severely challenged financially now. Those who have police and fire are even more challenged because one of the growing items of our budget is the payment that we have to make to CalPERS for pensions. In the 1990s, CalPERS tried to spread this rumor that the earnings of their investments would pay for all of the pensions, and so you didn't have to worry about it. Please give more generous pensions to all of your employees because you won't have to worry about it. It'll all be taken care of. Well, it turned out that was okay until CalPERS made some disastrous investments and lost 25% of their funds. But it was never true because the cost of pensions continue to rise, because if you have what is called a defined benefit pension plan, you are never finished with a year until all of the employees that worked for you during that year die. And so you have this endless obligation. The city of San Dimas is in the lowest 5% in the state in the percentage of our payroll that goes. We have our payroll, then we have to pay a percentage of our payroll to CalPERS. We are now paying 19%. That is in the lowest 5%. This number is good for 5 years, but because CalPERS continues to believe they will earn more money on their pension investments than they actually can, we are falling further behind. So 5 years from now, it is estimated that many of the cities will be paying well over 50% of the cost of their payroll to PERS for the pensions. Many of you may have read Laverne unfortunately has a problem that they've been dealing with it because they have police and fire, and for a small city, police and fire pensions are much more expensive than pensions for everybody else. So they are looking to try to borrow money to pay part of it down to arbitrage. They can borrow money in the market, maybe if they can qualify to sell the bonds, for only 4% interest instead of paying 7% to PERS on the deficit. But they are looking at some of the cities. The city of San Bernardino, for example, is projected to be requiring a payment of 79% of payroll. Now, you look at the economics of that, 70 to 75% of San Bernardino's total expenditures is for salaries and benefits for personnel. So they only have 25% of their budget left. And then they're going to have to pay 79% of that 75% for the pension. Where are they going to get the money? So I could tell you the city of San Dimas will be able to survive as long as anyone in the state. But this is a crisis that is coming, and it's going to hit us too, but we're just always going to be in that lower end because we did not drink the Kool-Aid that pensions would be free. So from a standpoint of when you look around at other cities, we are in much better shape than other cities are. But the reality is that our revenues are growing slower than our expenses. Our biggest single expense, and the biggest single expense for almost every city, is for public safety, for law enforcement and for fire protection. In San Dimas, we don't have anything to do with fire protection because we are part of the fire district. And the fire district is a taxing entity. You pay for their services on your property tax, doesn't go through us and then to the fire district. So we don't have anything to do with their fiscal problems that they may have. On the other hand, we contract with the Sheriff's Department for our police services. We pay about 30% of our total city budget, a little less than 30% now, for our public safety contract with the Sheriff's Department. That is, no city that has their own police department pays that little percentage. It is more expensive to have your own police department. The contracting with the sheriff is an effective way to provide policing services. And we believe in our case that our policing services are second to none. The Sheriff's Department provides great service for us. They're located in town. Captain Berg lives very near to San Dimas, has been here a while, has been serving a long time, and really is our police chief. And we're very happy to have him here, and we're good with the Sheriff's Department. But the cost of the Sheriff's Department is rising. And it's rising faster, as a percentage, it's rising faster than our revenues. We are virtually flat in sales tax because of the internet and sales on the internet that we don't happen to get anything from. Even though we added a substantial amount in the way of new sales tax when Costco was fully built out in the last couple of years, that did not cover the general decline in retail sales, taxable sales in San Dimas. And that is universal. Every city in the county and every city in the state is dealing with that same issue. So that's a source of revenue that typically we would have thought would have really pretty well followed inflation and would have gone up with, and that, by the way, is our largest single source of revenue. So we have, when people say, or we have enough revenue, we do for right now. For the future, we will not. Because the two things that cost us the most, the PERS contract, or the PERS pension plan and the sheriff's contract, are rising, and they will continue to rise. One element of the sheriff's contract that is rising faster than anything else is the liability trust fund. Part of our contract with the sheriff's department is that the cities who contract with the sheriff's department have to pay for the police liabilities. Police liabilities have increased greatly, and they've increased because of a lot of factors that are outside our control and outside the Sheriff's Department control, is that judgments on police excessive force cases, shooting cases, are now in the magnitude of 3 to 5 times as much as they used to be. A case that we were formerly settled for $500,000 or $600,000 now cost, well, in some cases, $7 or $8 million, so that our liability trust fund is way underfunded. We are now charging, the liability trust fund now charges the cities to 10% of the sheriff's contract. So that is almost $600,000 for that alone. The actuaries tell us that the price for next year ought to be 12.2%, which would mean adding that's another cost that would be somewhere around $125,000 or $130,000. That is the cost for next year. That's not the cost of covering the deficit we already have. The Liability Trust Fund Oversight Committee elected to only increase the rate to 10.5% next year because we still have cash to pay the payments, and we hope that some of the reforms that the Sheriff's Department has put in to eliminate or reduce the excessive force cases and the shooting cases will take effect, and we will in fact be able to get that under control. But that is an item that nobody expected. Just a few years ago, we were able to let the cities not make any contribution for a total of 18 months because we were superfunded. And we went from superfunded to underfunded in really a space of about 3 years. And that was caused by a few cases that just cost an extreme amount of money. And there were cases that at one time, the people who defend the cases felt we could win. It is virtually impossible to win a police shooting case and get a defense verdict now. There have been so much publicity about police brutality all over the United States and the police shooting people and all those things. So this is an issue that we're going to have to deal with from an expense standpoint for a long time. So from a balanced budget, revenue's flat. It will not be very long before we're not able to do the things that we try to do. And one of the things the city is committed to doing is infrastructure improvement, maintenance. We rebuild our streets on a scheduled basis as they need to be rebuilt. We do tree trimming. We do tree trimming on a 4-year cycle. Every tree, and we own a lot of trees in the city. All of you are owners of a lot of trees. They are trimmed every 4 years, which is considered to be kind of the standard of what you really need to do to not have windstorms, have a lot of trees down, things like that. You at least minimize it. Many other cities are on 15-year tree trimming cycles now. There are not very many that are under 10, but that's one of the things that we feel is the city has felt is something we need to do. We also rebuild the streets. One of the kind of the parts of public accounting that's changed is we now have to deal with depreciation. Not that we have to fund depreciation, but we now have to, in our accounting statements, we have to show depreciation. We spend somewhere near our depreciation each year in improvements. We really ought to spend more, but we're working on those things, but our revenues that we have some committed money. One of the committed things that we've used for many years is for streets work on streets is the gas tax. With cars getting tremendous gas mileage, there's not as much gas tax money, and therefore that has dwindled down to where nobody is able to, we're not able to do all of the work on our streets from that source. We have another source of money that's relatively new that can be used for streets, and that was Measure RR, which was the transit tax. We get about $500,000 in local return that we're able to use for streets. That's a pretty secure source of money. We expect to get that. The only problem is it's tied to the sales tax. So, because that is a sales tax. The Metro gets twice as much sales tax from San Dimas as San Dimas does. But their portion isn't growing any faster than ours. It's flat, ours is flat, so we can't expect that source of money to increase as the cost of doing business and repairing streets goes. Another source that's brand new, and it would produce about $500,000 a year for us, estimated, was the legislature in this past year put in a new 12 cents per gallon tax and increased the car registration. They apparently didn't realize that a governor not too far past increased the car registration and got recalled, but memories are short among politicians. That would produce about $500,000 a year for us. And again, something that would not grow probably, but it would do that for us. However, that is under siege by people who want to repeal it, and there is an initiative effort to a referendum that will be on the ballot to repeal that and actually prevent the Assembly and Senate from ever doing it again by putting it in the Constitution. I think before they started getting signatures, it was polling at a 65% favorable rate. So I think we may get that, we've only got that tax for a part of this year. We'll get it for next year, but who knows after the election, because it apparently is a proposition that unless people say, you know, we really do need money for streets, that proposition may be gone. So the other things that we have, all of you probably have noticed if you've been around town at all, we rebuilt Bonita Avenue and we reconfigured the downtown, and I think there was some people didn't want to get rid of the wooden sidewalks, but I think in the end, most people now think that that was a good move, that the redone facades that we did a few years ago have been done. The other thing we're kind of working on, this isn't worked out yet, but Blaine is working on this, is that there is an iconic and historic sign in downtown San Dimas at Rhodey's. And the Rhodey's sign is in need of a little repair. In fact, a whole lot of repair. But we are considering, as a part of the downtown project and some of the things we were doing there, we're working on trying to get that, some partnerships, something to do to get the Rhodey's sign restored and have it neon and all the stuff that it once had. The one problem that Blaine points out is we don't want it to cause any false advertising, because it says that Rhodey's served homemade pie. We're not sure Rhodey's still serves homemade pie, but you know, if it's historic, maybe it works. But that's something we're hoping that will, and that side of the street needs something to kind of give it a focal point. So hopefully we'll have that. The other big issue that's confronting San Dimas is the gold line coming through. Because of the unique way that the track comes through, sort of obliquely through town, it has more of an effect on San Dimas than it does in most cities. And in particular, the intersection at Cataract and Bonita Avenue is a particularly long and difficult intersection. So there's been a lot, many years ago we tried to signalize that, And the cost of signalizing it 10 years ago or more was like $175,000. I mean, that's not $1,750,000, pardon me, because it's a very difficult intersection. Well, the ultimate authority on how you cross intersections with public transit is the California Public Utilities Commission. And while everybody had been looking at a grade level crossing at that intersection, the Public Utilities Commission says you cannot make a safe grade level crossing there that will not block the traffic forever. So the answer is there has to be a flyover, which is a bridge that will start at Euclid Avenue and end just before San Dimas Avenue, that will look like the Berlin Wall, and it'll be around, well, if you look at the telephone poles, it'll be at the top of the telephone poles going through there. That has not been designed yet, and in fact, we have filed a suit, the city has filed a suit against Metro or the Construction Authority because they had not accounted for that in their EIR, and for very technical terms all of this involves, they did an addendum in which they apparently said it would have no impact. We challenged that. That's will be tried or settled sometime in the not too distant future, we hope. But there is as yet no design for that intersection and for that big bridge. We, of course, would like the bridge to be as, you can't say it would be less intrusive because it's going to be very intrusive, but the bridge will, the height of the bridge going across Monte Vista, which will be closed, is about 16 feet at that level. So you can see it's quite a challenge for us. The construction on the Gold Line will start in earnest around 2020 and be finished in 2026. It will involve the move of the freight rail from the center of the right-of-way to the north side of the right-of-way, and the building of the two tracks for the Gold Line on the south side of the right-of-way. And through San Dimas, the Gold Line tracks will be elevated, the freight track will still be at grade level. So we will still have a grade level intersection with the train, but the good news of that, the freight line is not used very much. So we are also, the other thing that there will be a new housing development built on San Dimas Avenue, on the west side of San Dimas Avenue between Gladstone and Allen Avenue. That's a small subdivision. The big trend, all the developers now want to build either small lot subdivisions, that is 3,500 square foot houses on 2,500 square foot lots. Obviously, they're all going to be 2 stories, so they look a little bit like the monopoly hotels. The city council decided we will not, that's not in our zoning code now, and we have decided that we will not include that in our zoning code, and we will not permit anyone to apply for a zone change that does that. We've also, there's an idea to building on properties that are not fully used now, commercial or otherwise, to build housing and to build what other people call medium density housing, which we call high density because they're at the neighborhood of 16 to 18 units per acre. We have not permitted any of those. One went through a process and was rejected because they're immediately close to neighborhoods that don't have that kind of, and it has been a problem. We have a housing element, excuse me, every city is required to have an approved housing element, and we have an approved housing element through 2022. So we are not required to make huge zone changes to accommodate a lot more housing. But as many of you know, if you read the newspapers, the state of California is trying to do everything they can to densify housing and to have cities like San Dimas not exist anymore. And one of the kind of interesting bills that they have is that so far it hasn't gotten much traction, but is an idea that if you're within half a mile of a transit station, you can build without regard to the city's concerns at all, without regard to the zoning. You can build up to 50 units per acre, and maybe more. And there is a proposal that has been worked out in Pomona on near the intersection of Bonita and Gary that is calls for 680 units, I believe, on 8.3 acres, which is a little denser than San Dimas is in most places. So we have made a conscious effort to preserve our old downtown residential. Over a lot of years, people have invested there, and it's gone well. Into the future, there may be big changes in what cities are able to do to maintain the character of their communities, because there is this huge idea that cities are the problem in building housing. The biggest thing that we could do to build housing in the past, particularly the low to moderate income housing, was redevelopment agency money, because 20% of that went into those funds. The state now suddenly figured out, after the fact, that when they ended redevelopment, they ended the building of low to moderate income housing, because there's virtually no other way to do it. So there have been problems with that. I think things are great. The city looks great. We have challenges in the future, and but I'm going to invite Blaine to come up, and we're going to spend whatever amount of time you'd like to spend talking about any questions you might have. Anybody have a question? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. We live in a senior community, and there seems to be people on fixed incomes, okay, seniors, veterans, disabled. There's like rent control. It's like their payments are more than your income, because they keep increasing the rent. And the rent, it's not like everybody has a $50 raise. Some people have $100, some people get $300, some have $200. I mean, there's no, never even doubt. Everybody has a different one.
We are not presently, cities are not presently under state law. You cannot enact new rent control laws. The legislature is considering changing that. The problem is that you have, at least the experts in this say, that if you want to encourage house building or more home building and more rental units, you cannot have rent control, because nobody will build where there's rent control. So that's an issue that we can't deal with now, and even in the future, that's a difficult issue. But at the present time, we cannot do rent control on ordinary housing that we have not, for cities that have not had rent control in the past.
It's forcing seniors out of their homes, okay, because people there, they like where they live. And people are getting forced out of their homes because they can't afford it, they got nowhere else to go. All these government programs, we're being told, are being canceled, and more than a dozen people had to move. There was a 91-year-old forced to move out of their home because these government programs
Yeah,
it's closing, then they're told they didn't close.
Yeah, cities have very little control, and we have virtually none over that issue. Housing is just a big problem, but we don't have real control over it.
So where do we go to get help?
I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know.
Nobody cares if people are on the street.
I think hopefully they do, but so far nobody has been able to come up with a solution or an answer for it.
So nobody's interested in helping people stay in their homes or find other places or find other programs in the system? You can't help us with that?
We have in our housing authority, we do provide housing, and not a lot because but we provide housing for seniors in our mobile home park. We keep the prices low for the mobile home park. In our senior housing that we have above the hardware store, we restrict the price, but even the restricted prices that are restricted are very high for some people. That's one of the difficulties.
May I ask one more question?
Yes, you may.
The other thing we're having trouble with is they've got rid of all our visitor parking. And I don't know if there's some law or some regulation where certain complexes have to have a number of parking for visitors, like disability parking. But there is no visitor parking, period. It's like everybody's got to park on the street. They're not allowed to park on the street. So now they're forced to park in the shopping area, which not everybody's happy about that. So where do our visitors park?
Well, I don't know the specifics of that location. Maybe you could talk to Blaine afterwards, and he can assist you. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Anyone else have a question? Yes.
Blaine, what is happening with Beaver Plaza? Anything?
Beaver Plaza, the shopping center on Beaver. There's been some activity with respect to brokers that are trying to bring new businesses to the center itself. And so they're kind of running up against a difficult thing that has been pretty much the problem throughout the several years with Beaver. The owner of the shopping center itself, the city has met with them to be able to say, we understand that over time retail changes. There may need to be a change in the zoning to allow different kinds of uses. For example, if maybe a drive-through would help with some tendency, or a change that would allow some non-retail uses in a shopping center, which is what we've done with many of the shopping centers in the community. For example, St. Dimas Station, north and south, we adjusted the zoning and allowed more businesses to come there. So we made that same offer and had that same meeting with the owner, and it's been 2 years. And so every quarter I nudge him and say, we're happy to meet with you. And I just got the email this for my last nudge. Thank you. The interest in the drive-through went away, so we're not quite sure what we would meet about. So but our effort is to maintain that consistent contact, because centers need to change over time. And it's difficult when the owner is not ready to work with you on that framework, and for some reason we've just not had that. In essence, the owner has been his own worst enemy with some of the tendencies that have been over the last several years. But we've not given up. And so the city is going to do an economic analysis of all the city, and it focuses on individual areas throughout the city. Beaver is one of them. So we'll have good information on what the market, what's needed in the market. For example, what is underserved in the retail areas in St. Dimas, which aren't many, but we can identify them. And Beaver is one of those areas that we specifically done in study to be able to see if there's a plan of action that would be realistic to accomplish to build that area. While Mike, let me give you an update on the roadie sign. I know you're all worried about this homemade pies thing. The homemade pies thing is going to have to disappear anyway. I talked to Anton, and he said that the health department does not allow him to have anything on his menu that's homemade, just because it's of the connotation of homemade. Okay, first question.
Yes. I have a question. You did a great job on the and the sidewalks. Do you ever have plans on coming up? Sometimes I think you forget that Old Town San Dimas goes north on San Dimas Avenue to 4th Street. Do you have any plans on redoing the sidewalks and driveways along San Dimas Avenue north of Bonita?
There are no present plans.
Is that something you might think about? Because the sidewalks are breaking up and you got asphalt covering cracks and stuff like that.
Well, now we're in a matter of, we've always been in a matter of priorities. And it's the money for the coming years are pretty much committed, at least the next year. We are committed on what our projects are. Because it takes, I don't know if you're aware, but in a city, it takes a long time. We have to do preliminary designs, even if we're going to do something. We have to do a preliminary design. Then we have to do a design that we can go out to bid with. We go out to bid, there's a process, and then by the time the bids come back and you award the bid, so you're always working for the time that contracts are already awarded for most of the work that'll be done in the next fiscal year, I believe.
I think when it comes to, we do sidewalk maintenance throughout the city is important to us. And so if there's areas where it's broken up or areas where it's been patched, we will do that temporarily, and then we get together with a contractor to do a large area sidewalk repair at the same time to get a better price. So if it's unsafe, we will certainly take care of that as part of our regular sidewalk program. But as far as a plan to move north, a major effort to a renovation plan, it's not on the books, anticipated. But maintaining our sidewalks is important to us throughout the city. And if you see something that we might have missed, I hope you'll let us know. But otherwise, we do regular inspections of sidewalks.
Well, thank you. I just want you to remind you that Old Town goes north of Bonita on San Dimas Avenue.
Very good.
Yes.
Could you, Blaine, just amplify on the replacement of San Dimas Avenue and about how long it's going to take?
This is a project to rebuild San Dimas Avenue from Puddingstone up to Via Verde. There's times when street projects when an overlay or a slurry is not the right answer. This is a rebuild. And so it's in this year's budget, and Christian's going to be out to bid on it soon, so that it can be a springtime project. Probably would take about 5 months. In this case, because of the way that we're doing the street, and we'll be keeping traffic open, so the traffic can flow north and south on the street. By the way, what that does, just in case you're curious about it, what it does is it increases the cost because the contractor needs to keep the street open. If he could close the street, he could have it done in 5 weeks. If he keeps the street open, it has to be a 5 to 6 month project. In addition, sometimes it changes the kind of street reconstruction we do. We like to go and dig out the street down to the bed and then rebuild the street. And then when we rebuild it, we put concrete in with the amendments that go back into the base for the road. And we end up with a 40-year road instead of a 20-year road as far as length of time. We also understand it's difficult to close major streets to be able to do that. So, and long story short, we'll start in April or May, and we anticipate a 5-month construction cycle, but it will be open to traffic during that time, especially during the season.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to comment. I walk our streets for exercise, and I find that most of our sidewalks, where there has been a problem, it's immediately taken care of. I have never fallen, so apparently you do a great job. So I'm very impressed. There are a few that need more work, but you always seem to get to everything. So thank you.
Thank you. The ones where there are deviations that create a risk, we try to get those as soon as we, and we have a contract with the people that do the cutting if it's that much, and so if it's a safety issue, we do not delay that until we have money. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. the rents for the apartments and rents for storage units been raised more than once a year?
If they're privately owned, we don't have any control over the things that's between the tenants and depending on the relationship, whether you have a lease or whatever you have, they control their own pricing and when they do it.
How do you look for privately owned?
Well, why don't you talk to Blaine afterwards and maybe he can help you with all of that. Okay. Anyone else have a question? Carl?
Up in San Dimas Canyon, at the very north end of the city, there's a project that's been on the books for a long time to reopen, redesign and reopen Golden Hills, I think it's Golden Hills Road. That has been inordinately delayed through, I understand, no fault of the city, but it continues to be a project that is inordinately delayed. Many of us who live up in that sector are frustrated by it. Is there anything that can be done? I mean, I've personally spoken to the supervisor's office to try and engender some fast track of this, but it doesn't seem to work.
You're right, it does not work. Blaine?
I do a little bit of an update. The last two approvals that come from the County Public Works with respect to the stormwater design as well as the street design, those are the last two approvals we need to obtain. We got one of those last week, and we're hoping to get the other within a week or two. So, and after those two final approvals, then we should be able to go ahead and bid the project. It's all designed, it's ready to go. It will be a redesign. Instead of the old design kind of wandered through that area and was hung right off the edge of that cliff. And so we're bypassing all of that. So we're actually building the road around it. So it has a new location. And so it'll be a new street that won't be subject to any flooding in the future. So someday the patients will be rewarded. We're almost there. And so our hope is that we would also be able to be out to bid for that project that will be constructed in the spring and summer as well. We hope.
One of the additional complications of that, it's on flood control property. So it took a while to negotiate for them to let us be willing to, for the county flood control district to be willing to let us build it there. Yes, anyone else? Yes, sir.
Is that bridge going to be a bridge? There's no other alternatives?
There we go.
Yeah.
And at the Benita Cataract intersection, the reason for the bridge is because of the traffic, backup if it were an at rate. So in order to deal with and respond to the backup to the traffic, the bridge will be a necessity. You have to put the train over the top so that it doesn't impact the traffic flow. So there will be a bridge. What we're working on is what will look like, and is there a way to kind of mitigate the impacts of that bridge. And then also what will the intersection look like, so that it will go underneath the bridge. We're looking at a couple of alternatives that, in addition to just maybe a standard design of an intersection with traffic signals and so forth, would be maybe even a roundabout design. And so we're looking to see if that roundabout is something that's feasible, as well as something that the California Public Utilities Commission would approve. And also if the gold line would, how they feel about that intersection design as well. So it's a series of engineering analysis and traffic analysis to figure out which is the best solution for the crossing itself, the bridge, as well as the street work community. But it is a recommended solution to the traffic backup. The thing is that the trains will come on frequency, and especially during the morning and the evening peak hour traffic, that we may have traffic backing up 2 or 3 blocks. It would be difficult to move that much traffic through because the trains would be going through and otherwise blocking that intersection. So it's that kind of an impact.
Yes, ma'am.
How often do they let you go through?
Every 5 minutes, each direction. They say that's in 2036 or 2035, and I'm personally not going to worry about it. So, because I'm sure it will not bother me.
Mrs. Chair, I think you were planning on maybe like 12-minute headways in some cases, but on the other hand, when the operation begins, it could be more frequent, depending on the ridership. It seems like every 12 minutes there could be a train, and that's both ways. So there would be a train, and the trains don't always match up. In other words, the trains will cross at the intersection at the same time, so but they will be at 12, somewhere around the 12-minute frequency for each train.
Anyone else?
Just a quick question
Yes.
about the bridge. Can it not be a tunnel?
No, because there is a gigantic water pipe that goes right down Bonita Avenue that supplies Los Angeles, and I mean, it is a huge water pipe. The water pipe diameter is almost, well, it's at least half of the width of Bonita Avenue. When they install that down the middle, it's a big pipe, and there's no way they can deal with that. And it's, I don't know how far it is, not that far below the ground, 10 feet maybe. But they could not tunnel under it. Yes.
Thank you. There's the trains that are going through right now, and I'm just wondering who to talk to convey. Some of those train people that drive the train are very courteous, and they don't just lean on their horn all the way through the intersections, where some of these guys seem to be really upset and take it out on the people that live around them, and they lay on those horns all the way through every intersection.
You know, they assure us that they all follow the rules exactly.
I'm telling you, they say. Those guys are so nice, and they just do it lightly, and, you know.
Well, the trains on that track, there aren't very many. There are only a couple of a day. The ones that make the noise really, and when the BNSF locomotives were used for the Metro Link and it goes farther south, they made a lot of noise.
So you talked to that.
The people in that neighborhood have talked, and we have talked. There have been a lot of meetings with the Metro Link, and basically they say, well, it'll all be cured when they get the Tier 4 locomotives, and they got the Tier 4 locomotives, but apparently they don't work, so they're not able to use them. So who knows what that? But that's an issue. They claim that they're complying with the federal law that requires the sounding of horns. Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Is the city doing something for the big event that is happening in April, where Bonita is going to be closed from, Claremont all the way down here? And I want to call it a race, but I guess they're walking and cycling and all things. Is the city currently involved in preparation?
Yes.
Okay.
Big time involved big time involved in that. Yeah, this is an event for the streets. Our street will be closed from the hardware store to just to Walnut.
Yeah, I think so.
But it'll be closed, and then there are various other sections will be closed all the way, so there'll be a chance for people to walk, crawl, or whatever they want to do out on the street.
But it's all the way, to Claremont or past?
So far as I know, it goes to Claremont.
Yeah, but this is such a good opportunity to introduce people to downtown. Notice I'm not mentioning flags. Anyway, that would be such a good idea to say, you're coming from Claremont, there's a lot to do in downtown, San Dimas. It's a big event.
Yeah, it's a big countywide event, and it's. But we are our Parks and Recreation Department and Planning Department and Public Works are all working on our participation in that. Anyone else? Well, thank you very much for coming, and we appreciate it.